frequency. So by the way, if you don't know what deactivating strategies are, you can think of it as like these subconscious strategies to create space in relationship dynamics through a series of justifications when some wound is triggered. Now, this wound can be small or big. So for example, for a fearful avoidant, often what you'll see is like they might feel really helpless. They might feel really unseen. They might have all this intense emotion because they might have all these previously stored traumas around helplessness and being unseen. And they work to really push somebody away as a subconscious strategy to create space and protection for themselves. And so it can be quite intense. But for a dismissive avoidant, a deactivating strategy can be a wound like just feeling a little uncomfortable and not liking being vulnerable or feeling ashamed. And that can create a need to create space. Now, I want you to imagine if the dismissive avoidant is feeling deactivating strategies. I'm going to compare this to the FA. Dismissive avoidants, I would say, generally feel the emotional intensity of needing to deactivate and the emotional experience as sort of like a 4 out of 10, but the frequency can be like a 6 or a 7. The fearful avoidant might experience the frequency as a 1 or a 2, but the emotional intensity is like a 9 or a 10. So I hope that makes sense. So like fearful avoidance, you'll see more intense deactivating, further pushing away, harsher ways of pushing people away, like being sharp with words, being mean. It can seem very sudden and extreme from like one really warm, hot, involved, emotional, open person to like the extreme polar opposite. Whereas with a dismissive avoidant, what you'll often see is there's like a little bit of warmth and then there's a little bit of pushing back and a little bit of warmth and a little bit of pushing back. And it can seem like they're their own sort of version of hot and cold, but they're not ever really hot and cold. They're like lukewarm and cool, if that makes sense, okay? So, and sometimes cold too. Definitely when they're like triggered, they can go to the extreme of cold, but they're not getting all the way to hot very much on the other side. And the reason for this is that the wounds that they tend to deactivate around are usually vulnerability is unsafe or I am unsafe. And so if you're carrying those wounds, you're not really getting hot with somebody because you don't feel safe to get like all the way warm and open and super deeply connected, right? You're kind of like going in guarded all the time. And then there's also things like my independence or autonomy are maybe being taken away or threatened, or there's shame involved and I feel like I'm defective or I'm not good enough or something's wrong with me. And so those will create a little more intense deactivating strategies for the dismissive avoidant. And what you'll see is that dismissive avoidants often carry this pattern of they can be really connected to somebody, but because if you carry an internal wound or belief system about yourself that says, I am defective, something's wrong with me, the act of getting seen by somebody, the act of really showing the vulnerable parts of yourself, literally kick that wound into gear. And so sometimes you'll see a dismissive avoidant open up, maybe because they've had a couple of drinks, maybe because they're in like the earlier stages of a relationship and things are just really flowing, or because just, you know, for whatever reason, it's been a magical date and you've just hit it off and they've opened up. And then sometimes you'll see that followed up by like a sharp kind of shutdown and withdrawing. And and what you'll see in that is literally that the dismissive avoidant has those core wounds triggered and they're like, it's like a tortoise going back into its shell. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been seen and I have to hide myself and protect myself because that's not safe and they're going to see that I'm defective or something's wrong or bad about me. And it's such an important thing if you are the dismissive avoidant to be able to go through and recognize that you're doing and then work to reprogram those core wounds that create that pattern of behavior, because it's a really hard thing for you as a person, if you're the dismissive avoidant watching this, to experience. And it's very confusing and difficult for the people on the external side of that as well to experience. And again, this isn't to say either of these two things, because I notice that people say both in the comments sometimes. And I know it comes from just like going through challenges in relationships and stuff, but this isn't to say like, if you're the partner of a dismissive avoidant, just put up with this forever and deal with their deactivating strategies. No, it's not to say that. It's to help educate, because it's with awareness and understanding that we're empowered to make more productive and constructive decisions. And this isn't to say either that if you're the partner of a dismissive avoidant, leave as soon as the person deactivates. But what we really want want and what I'm a huge advocate for across the boards everywhere is for the dismissive avoidant to be able to show up, be accountable for their experiences and their patterns, and work to reprogram them. And I know some people are like, oh, dismissive avoidants rarely do the work. I'm going to tell you firsthand, we've got tons of dismissive avoidants inside of the school working their butts off and becoming so secure. And I should try to get probably some of their success stories just now that I'm thinking